Are you working on anything right now?
Yeah, so the David D's piece got me hired to co-direct a feature-length doc where there's going to be maybe let's say 10 conspiracy theorists that we're just going to sort of live with and do these intimate portraits of, like conspiracy theorists, people who are ex-conspiracy theorists, family members of conspiracy theorists, and then intertwine that with like experts, like historians, psychologists, neurologists, who will give context to why we believe, why are conspiracy theories on the rise, etc. Then working on a feature-length doc about cryptozoologists, so the people that study Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and all of those. I had done a short doc that helped to inspire this, and then working on a docu-series that's about folklore, like bizarre folklore, and Telos or Bust, the one about Mount Shasta. That's sort of like our pilot in progress for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Telos or Bust.
Yeah.
Explain that one for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah. So there's a town in Northern California called Mount Shasta. It's a really small town, like 3,000 people, but it's known for this majestic mountain that rises up into the sky that you see from miles and miles away, and you see it and it's just like, wow, this mountain is striking, and it sort of calls you to it. But most people just drive right by and don't realize that in the town at the foot of the mountains, a large percentage of the people that live there believe that there's a hidden city underneath the mountain called Telos, and it's inhabited by what they call ascended masters, which are sort of these perfect beings, immortal beings that maybe were once human, and they live in this amazing crystalline interdimensional
Castle.
City. Yeah, and they're they escaped Lemuria and Atlantis when they sank. A handful of them had escaped to Telos through the inner Earth network of tunnels that exists. So they say, and they ended up underneath Mount Shasta, and so there's a whole spectrum of beliefs there. Like there's a religion that popped up called the I Am activity, that is based out of there, that has their own set of beliefs. There's the people that kind of somewhat worship the ascended masters. And then there's those that just, they want to get into Telos and think it's a physical city, and they look for the door on the mountain. And some claim that they've found the door and that you can access the city. Others, it's more like a spiritual place, so they'll lead you into it through meditation or chanting. And so it's this whole, but imagine it's a whole little town of people that all sort of believe that this thing exists, this sort of metaphysical thing exists under the mountain. Yeah, and so it's a wild place, and there's for a town that size, there's 10 crystal shops, and they're all totally busy inside. Really? People just buying crystals and other things. And everyone you meet is or almost everyone you meet is super fascinating, interesting character, has their own story about how they got there and why.
It's funny when you go to those weird little remote towns in these random places around the country, you'll find these types of characters.
Yeah, Sedona is another. I haven't been there, but
Sedona. Yeah,
and in Florida, there's Cassadaga, and that's a city that's all spiritualists and mediums. So
really,
yeah, and psychics, and so it's it's a tiny town inside another town, but it's the highest percentage of spiritualists and mediums. And so if you really want to get a reading or talk to a dead loved one, you want to talk to your great grandma, you go to Cassadaga and you can talk to your great grandma.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know what part of Florida it is?
Yeah, it's central, a little north-ish. Okay. I think it's near, my geography is not 100%, but it's nearer to Orlando. So it's not that far from here probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. We want to do one of our episodes there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to a medium or anything like that?
I'm not really. I haven't had a serious conversation with psychics, yes, but not someone who channels the dead.
Right.
Yeah.
You have talked to psychics, though.
Yes. Yeah.
What is your experience with psychics?
I talked to this man who's known as the greatest living psychic, or he's like the most scientifically studied psychic.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Shawn Harabance. He's almost 90. And I found out about him because I'm working on another little short doc about this this scientist in Canada who he was made famous by his God helmet experiments. So he designed a helmet that stimulated your brain with magnetic fields and created like the God experience. And he studied. He died. He's a very reputable scientist and fairly well respected. And he had this psychic, Shawn Harabance, into his lab to study his brain, to try and figure out like what is going on with this guy, and also to run studies where he would give psychic readings of people. He would do a scientific study designed around this, and the accuracy was pretty like statistically astounding. Mm-hmm. So he told me to go meet with this guy, and he lives outside of Houston. So I just drove and met him, and as soon as I walked in the room, he asked me how I was doing like post breakup, and I had just broken up with like a girlfriend of 3 years.
Really?
Yep. And then he started asking me about my work shoots that I was working on, and there's no way, because these are shoots that I haven't even shot yet. And he's like, oh yeah, so you're going to Africa, and like crazy shit. Like just as soon as I walked in the room, and I was just like, oh wow, because I'd never had a reading or even necessarily believed
Where was
in
this
it.
again?
Outside of Houston.
Okay.
And the problem is he's like Trinidadian and Indian, and his accent is like almost indecipherable. Like I understood just half of what he was saying. It was really hard to understand him. And he's super old and not in good health. And so I was meeting with him to see if I would want to film with him. But yeah, it was wild. And he's had, so pretty much every past president or administration has consulted him. And he was showing me like the official documents, like whatever, like with Bill Clinton, and
What?
Bill Clinton's asking him about, he's advising him on like soybean future prices, like crazy shit.
What?
Yeah. He has correspondence with all these past presidents. And the only one of, probably since like Reagan, that he hasn't consulted was, and Biden, I doubt he has, but was Trump. So Trump was the only one that and apparently, you remember
Trump don't have time for that shit.
Well, do you remember Corey Lewandowski? He was like Trump's campaign manager.
Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah, he was Trump's campaign manager, and then he like shoved some like a female reporter in an event and like bruised her arm, and then he was out. And
does he live in Florida?
No, that was Roger Stone. Oh no, and you're thinking of this other guy,
the younger guy.
Yeah. That's not him.
Okay.
But anyway,
okay.
So Corey,
look that guy up he's talking about.
Yeah.
What's his name? Corey
Lewandowski.
Corey Lewandowski.
So Shawn Harabance told me, I don't have proof obviously, but that Corey Lewandowski reached out to him and was like, well, Trump wants a reading. We want Trump to get a reading. And Shawn Harabance basically was just like, yeah, I'll give him a reading if he goes and sees like a psychologist or something, because like something's not right in his head.
Before meeting him?
Before meeting him, he said that.
Man.
Yeah, that's Corey.
So that's the guy. Okay.
Yeah, so he didn't want to give Trump a reading, basically.
Oh, I wish he would have.
Yeah, it would have been.
Could you imagine being able to film that?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I read a bunch of the studies that, he was studied at like, I think like Caltech or just some like, real serious educational institutions. Mm-hmm. And some of his like his hits, like his psychic hits were like 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then other times, like with a lot of this phenomena, it's hard to reproduce consistently. Other times he was just like as good as chance, so it wasn't like every time he would be able to read someone accurately, but other times it was just like scary how accurate he was.
Well, is he still alive?
He's still alive.
Look him up real quick.
Yeah.
How do you spell his name?
Shawn, Sean, and then Harabance is Harribance.
Harabance. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things it's coming back to
this
me
guy.
now. Okay.
He's very intense looking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's what he looks like now. Yeah. The gray hair. Really nice guy.
In Houston.
Yeah. And so he didn't he didn't even learn to read or write until like in his like teens, because he had a severe learning disability. And also his brain has no geospatial faculty. So if he walks out of his house, he has no idea where he is. Like, he's lost.
Really?
Immediately. Yeah. Like, he just doesn't know where he is in space, basically, like directionally.
Yeah.
And there's when they had him in the MRI, there was like, it looked as if he had some kind of brain damage in certain areas. And so, the lay theory is like that, damage in one area could lead to some kind of abilities
enhancement in other areas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've heard things similar to that with like people who have had lots of brain trauma.
Right. Yeah.
Like they somehow become like excel in some area of their life, whether it be like business or whatever it is, or sports or
amazing at math. And,
Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah.
So does he not leave his house?
Not really. And I think, with his wife. He has his wife, so she always has to be with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's so old now, I don't think they, do much.